Please subscribe to this channel and also turn on your notification bell in order to get our latest updates.
For your information out there, I have promised you twice that I am bringing to you the exact names of those who killed Field Marshal. I don't joke with that. I have them from a few days after it happened. I promise you, look at me, eyeball to eyeball. I will bring you the names, including their images, their footages, including even the cars they have bought with the blood money. I will bring you all of those names and those faces, and also not only those who carried out the act. I will bring you the names of those who paid the money, both on Ground Zero and in the diaspora. I promise you, I am bringing you those names and their faces. The guy on your left in military fatigue is called Amadou. Amadou is the one who has now, as I learned, gone to be with Ekema Patrick. He couldn't eat the blood money. He was a hit man. That is the guy who shot Field Marshal and also used the butt of his gun, as I learned, to hit the face. That is him on your left. That is the hit man. The guy on your right is the one they call per second. Ladies and gentlemen, none of them is a military personnel. They were all just dressed. They have been dressed up. You see the car, the truck that the guy on your right is standing in front. Because the military in the BLM became so afraid, ladies and gentlemen, of being blown up. They hired this guy. Ladies and gentlemen, to be driving them. They hired him to be driving them around BLM. So that is the guy they call per second. That is his face. Again, the one whose death was faked. The guy whose death was faked in the BLM just to get Field Marshal. That is his face. And again, the one on your left is the one who carried out the assassination of Field Marshal. I call them Paul Tassong's hitmen. Now we also have this one here. He is called Atabong Kingsley. He was one of the team players who led the fall. He was number 2. Again, his name is Atabong Kingsley. He was among them in the bush. Now, Atabong Kingsley, ladies and gentlemen, if you can see the image behind him, that is the helicopter. That is the helicopter that took the remains, that flew to that village and carried the remains of Field Marshal to Kumba. Now let me remember.
Chris Ano, the Secretary of State for Communication of the IG, has presented the photos of 3 former Red Dragon fighters he says were the ones who were paid to eliminate Field Marshal, his younger brother. Please stay tuned as he narrates how it all happened.
I promise over the weeks, over the months, coming back to you, to reveal to you, disclose to you, those behind the assassination of Field Marshal. Field Marshal was not just an Amazonian fighter like any other fighter. Field Marshal was my own brother, my own immediate brother, immediate follower. And you know what that means. So for almost 6 years, combing through the hills, the valleys, and bushes of the BLM, La République du Cameroon invading soldiers could not capture, kill, nor find Field Marshal of Ambazonia. After all these years, they had given up on ever locating him. In fact, an intelligent source among the bees in the BLM related to me how they had given up looking or searching for Field Marshal. He added that they would only go looking for him if and when he attacked. Field Marshal of Ambazonia was so convinced that they were never going to locate him or match his guts or capture him that he reduced them to Boy Scouts of La République du Cameroon, lacking war agility and requisite experience. On several occasions, he was heard questioning why and for how long Paul Biya will keep on sending Boy Scouts to the BLM to die looking for him. And he was very right. They could never have found him or killed him. If it were left in the hands and discretion of the invading and occupying Cameroon army in the BLM, Field Marshal would still be alive today. They didn't and couldn't kill him. Field Marshal didn't die from any bullet of the Cameroon army. In fact, the 4 of them that accompanied the hired assassins of Paul Tassong to Field Marshal's location would not as much as get anywhere close to the location during the mission. They decided to stop halfway before the location, preferring the 4 assassins to go complete the mission. They reunited only after the mission was accomplished, according to an eyewitness who was one of the team members. This should explain why, unlike in their character, no Cameroon soldier could pose with the remains of Field Marshal at the scene of the murder. They couldn't because the assassination wasn't carried out by them. They were not there at the scene. Even the assassins will not also pose with a dead body of Field Marshal because they did not want to expose their identities. It was not until the following day, after the army had made its way from almost 12 hours of overnight trekking from Menji, that they posed at the scene with the remains of Field Marshal of Ambazonia. Now, take note. The facts of the narrative I'm about bringing to you are coming from insiders. Insiders. And I mean some of the guys who actually were part of the execution team. Not someone else spoke to them. I personally did. I spoke to them. And we actually have them on record. Of course, we equally spoke to some military sources who were part of the recovery team that trekked to that forest to recover the body of Field Marshal of Ambazonia. The mission to eliminate Field Marshal started on Monday, July the 11th. Paul Tassong's contracted assassins were first seen sneaking into the vicinity that Monday evening, Monday, July the 11th. Villagers who first spotted them said they looked strange and suspicious. They didn't look like people they have seen around. The villagers thought they could be the military descending from Menji. But then they quickly dismissed the idea because the assassins didn't dress looking like professional soldiers. At a second thought, The villagers perceived they must be Amber boys, since Ambers were in the habit of coming in once in a while and spending days in the surrounding cocoa farms in that area. Late that Monday evening, July the 11th, the villagers, not seeing the four mysterious men return, some two villagers set out to see they could trace them, but it was an exercise in futility. The assassins had disappeared into the sprawling cocoa farms, where they remained in hiding throughout the night. The following morning, being July the 12th, Tuesday, July the 12th, the day of the assassination, the assassins re-emerged from their hiding in the cocoa farms. We now are aware that they were not set out to kill just Field Marshal alone. They did not. They had two people in mind as their targets, and they were set out to kill Field Marshal 2 by 2 and Field Marshal the King. At about 8 a.m. or past 8 a.m., they invaded the home of a former Red Dragon fighter, popularly known as Petit Pongo. Petit Pongo hails from the village of Belua, at least for those of you who are familiar with Fontem. He had a cocoa farm in the vicinity and was living there. He was a former Red Dragon, but had left the bush since 2018 to take care of his farm. The assassins picked him up, tied up his hands, briefly tortured and intimidated him to lead them to where FM 2 by 2 was. He lived quite close to FM 2 by 2, but 2 by 2 had already left for the morning to the bush. He told them same, but they insisted that he must take them to where 2 by 2 was. When he responded that the bush was quite sprawling and had to figure out exactly where 2 by 2 had gone to. At this point, the assassins demanded that he leads them to where FMA was camping. But he didn't know the location either, the location of FMA. He tried explaining that he had long left the camp since 2018 and that Field Marshal the King and his team changed location several times. The assassins knew he was speaking the truth because they all knew him. All of them, at one point, were members of the Red Dragons. I mean, the assassins and the victim. They were all members of the Red Dragons. They knew who they were talking to. But because they masked their faces, the culprit couldn't immediately identify them. He didn't know whom he was talking to. They masked their faces. Unable to lead them to Field Marshal 2 by 2 and Field Marshal of Amazonia, they made him to take them to another ex-fighter whom FMA had recently disciplined by sending out of the camp for torturing a woman and confiscating her cell phone. When they arrived, they heard of this young man going by the name of Money. He wasn't in. They waited until he walked in on them. Our eyewitness said immediately he stepped in, the assassins pounced on him, kicked him military style on his legs, and he staggered to the floor. They got him on his legs, tied his hands behind his back, and demanded that he lead them to FMA's location. At first, he would not cooperate. He told them he had no idea where FMA lives. He swore several times he didn't know the whereabouts or the location, the camp of Field Marshal the King. At this point, they led him behind the house where a tank full of rainwater was waiting. They submerged him in the tank, threatening that they will end his life right there if he didn't cooperate. At this point, our source said he heard something like a gunshot from behind the house and then a loud wailing and confession from the victim. Quote, "Yes, I will take you there. I will take you for there." End of quote. At the admission, they took him out of the water tank and led him back into the house with blood oozing from his nose. The journey to Field Marshal's camp started at that moment. It was, I'm told, a little after 9 a.m. at this time. My source told me that the boy was strictly warned that if he should take them through any track where they can be trapped, that they will shoot him to death. Again, all of these assassins had been part of the Red Dragons in the past, but had left at least 3 years prior to this day. They were well aware that taking the regular track to Field Marshal's camp, they wouldn't arrive FMA unstopped or killed. They knew that there were traps and security on different spots on the track. They wouldn't return in one piece if they followed the regular path to the location. So they made sure their captive invented new tracks through the bushes to avoid being killed. From where they picked up their escort to FMA's hiding, it took them a good amount of 8 hours of trekking. 8 hours of trekking. When they arrived, Field Marshal wasn't sleeping as some people have said. No, he wasn't. He was seated on a string bed, actually taking dinner with one of his guards. His location was such that you couldn't get to it without passing through security and other camps in the vicinity. But because the assassins traveled with someone very familiar with the location and who knew how to cut off traps, security, and the other camps before getting to him, Field Marshal and others were essentially taken by surprise, to the effect that they were almost all ambushed. From a distance, as they spotted Field Marshal seated on the string bed, they shot him from the back, sniper style. He shouted, Field Marshal shouted, exclaiming, "Jesus," as he slumped on his own back at the sniper's bullet. The assassins then waited for a moment to see if he wakes back up. He didn't. Life had been taken out of him. At this point, the guard had succeeded to escape, the guard who was with Field Marshal, since they were taken by surprise. The first fighter from the nearby camp to get to the scene was ambushed and killed with a belly busted. Others, discovering they had been taken by surprise, scampered for their own safety. So then, who were these assassins? Now, ladies and gentlemen, unfortunately, my technician is not here to run the images, but what I intend to do is, after this presentation, I will then bring you the images, their faces. You will see their faces and know their names. So who were the assassins? They were all former Red Dragons fighters, former generals and commanders. But they had left fighting for between 2 to 3 years long. They had long gone. Some had joined the DDRO, and others had joined the occupying La République du Cameroon soldiers in Azi and Minji as escorts and informants. The leader of the team, the person whose face I will show you later, popularly known as Per Second, as someone he judged to call him, from the little town of Inje, in the vicinity of Azi in Fontaine, was one of the first recruits in the Red Dragons. Two of them had 2 years ago negotiated with the occupying soldiers and turned themselves to them in a stage murder. La République du Cameroon soldiers in Azi conducted a mock of fake death for both of them. Their supposed corpses were paraded on social media. But that very day, their corpses were paraded, they were spotted with military authorities in Buea. They had been rushed there, that is, rushed to Buea, then to brief La République du Cameroon military commanders in Buea on how to capture Fimecha. That was about 2 years ago. But before they could leave Buea and return to the BLM with the troops, news had leaked to Fimecha that they were spotted in Buea with the military and that they were returning with the military to conduct a capture mission. Before they got to the spot where Fimecha and the other fighters were hiding, of course, as I said, the news had leaked and they had disappeared. They had vanished. That plot failed. Since then, this killer assassin remained an escort for the occupying military, even driving them each time that military was afraid of the Fansé ambush on the Chang-Libialem road. He is the one on Okada, seen escorting the body of Fimecha from the murder scene to the waiting La République du Cameroon military helicopter. You all saw that Okada guy carrying the corpse. I will show you his face. One Atabon Kingsley was another member of the four paid by Paul Tasson. Unlike Per Second, who hails from Fontaine LGA, Kingsley hails from Alo LGA. He deserted the Red Dragons after Ayeke plotted to kill him. He joined DDRO briefly for a while before moving to Chang, where he became another informant, an escort for the invading soldiers. That is, I will show you his face too. He is the most talkative among them. He actually took and circulated the first images of Fimecha that made the rounds on social media after he was killed. The third assassin, the actual hitman, the one who fired the shot, is Paul Tasson's neighbor from same village of Mokbin in Alo, LGA. He is popularly known as Amadou. Again, I will show you his face. He is also reported to be the one who deformed Fimecha's face after hitting it with the butt of his gun to make sure Fimecha was actually dead. I will show you his face too. Take note, they were not dressed in military attire when they carried out this mission or murder. They changed their attire only after the killing. Maybe they changed it to camouflage among the rest of the military in an effort to hide their identities. He too had previously served in the Red Dragons, the hitman. The last killer whose face you will also see by the name of Nevi. Actually, we don't have Nevi's image. He is the only person whose image we do not have. But he was one of them, and he was also a former member of the Red Dragons. Actually, one of the generals. Like the others, he had deserted the Red Dragons more than 2 years before this day. It wasn't going to take long before the murderers began to talk after the assassination. First, the early photos that made the rounds on social media were sent to their fellow blacklegger who runs an off license in Chang. The black layer then posted them on social media before rushing there to do a live show bragging how finally they got Field Marshal the King. They equally made sure they told those who had hired them and paid for it. They mentioned one name, that of Paul Tasson, colonial minister in La République du Cameroon, who is from Libya too. On weekend, the 16th, through the 17th, the assassins visited Paul Tasson to confirm the accomplishment of the mission. Again, the weekend of the 16th and 17th, all the four of them visited Paul Tasson, including the two that they captured to take them to the scene. And for your information, those two are still with them. The two are still with them. And the 2 year I'm referring to those they forcefully picked up to take to the location, to lead them to the location of Field Marshal. They are still with them. They are together. So on Monday, the 18th, they were paid through Paul Tasson's middleman in Boya. The amount paid, we learned, was 23 million CFA. Again, that was on July the 18th. The amount was to be divided among the 6 of them. Now, this is interesting. The amount is not being divided among the 4 assassins, but the amount, the 23 million, we learn, was divided amongst the 6 of them. The 4 who were the actual mission leaders, and the other 2 who led them there. So the amount, the 23 million, is being shared by the 6 of them. That is again including the 2 escorts they had picked up and forced to lead them to Field Marshal's location. The amount may have been a little more than 23 million, but for the scuffle that developed among the boys over who should get the lion's share of the amount. Now, this is what I understand. I understand that they had gone on the 18th to get that money. When they got to the office of this agent whom Paul Tasson was using in Boya to pay them, there was a fight as to how they are going to share the money, divide the money. And so the guy who was to pay them realized they were already fighting even without the money getting in their hands. He told them to leave and come back. And so they left. Now, this is what happened. As a result of the scuffle, the fight between them, Tasson's paymaster suggested that they all leave and come back later. When they returned later, the money had already been split and packaged in different envelopes for them, so that each person walked in and just picked his own envelope without knowing exactly what was in the other person's envelope. That is what transpired. That's how the money was shared. On the July 20th, they all traveled to Douala. Atabon Kingsley bought a car with his own part of the money. And we will bring you the image of the car too. We will show you the image of the car that you bought with the blood money. The young guy called Per Second, we learn, is planning to travel abroad with his own share of the money. 2 have moved to Bafoussam and taken rented permanent homes. Another one is in Yaoundé. Now we'll learn of some good news 2 days ago. It is not yet very much confirmed, but so far it sounds like it is true. And the good news, ladies and gentlemen, is that Amadou, the guy from Paul Tasson's neighborhood, from a mug bin. The hit man himself, the guy who actually gone down field marshal, was reported killed or dead 2 days ago. He is now with Patrick Ekema. That is, again, if the news is confirmed, he will not be eating his own share of the blood money. He is said to have died mysteriously in the Bafoussam hospital 3 days ago. As far as the diaspora angle is concerned, now this is very, very important. As far as the diaspora is concerned, the hands of the entire former executive of Fontem LGA, ladies and gentlemen, cannot be clean. Their hands cannot be clean because they will not succeed in controlling Field Marshal the King and the fighters on the ground. They had launched a vilification campaign against Field Marshal and on several occasions invoked the ultimate deed, the ultimate sacrifice on him. Then they brought up this campaign also of the need to open up Fontem and Lebialem, conniving with Likudo, the so-called Leban Cultural and Development Association or organization. They connive. Fontem LGA, former executive, they connive with this organization. And all agreed that Field Marshal was the hindrance to the opening up of Lebialem. Other meetings were held in Maryland and in Ohio. And fora were created, including one called Leban Forum. It still exists, where calls were made to kill FMA. Should he not cooperate with them in opening up Fontem and Lebialem at large? A Fontem LGA meeting, again, a Fontem LGA meeting took place through Zoom on Sunday, June the 19th. In that meeting, one John Talee, a nurse residing in North Carolina, raised a motion. Ladies and gentlemen, listen to this. Again, in that meeting, a nurse by the name of John Talee, who lives in North Carolina, raised a motion in that meeting to raise funds to pay anyone who will kill Field Marshal of Ambazonia. He intimated that he would personally donate anywhere from within $10,000 to $30,000. Unfortunately, I couldn't find his picture out there. Again, he was trying to persuade others in that meeting that he would personally donate anywhere between $10,000 to $30,000 for the assassination of Field Marshal, for anyone who would do the job. Another fellow called Edmund Folefek, he is supposed to be a medical doctor residing in Ohio. He joined in the chorus and suggested that he will rush to Boston to see if he can raise some more funds. The money, they said, will not go into the BLM LGA. The money, they said, will not go into Fontem LGA account. No, the money was not to go into Fontem LGA accounts. No, but the money will be remitted into one bank of Ambazonia. We have this one on tape, on record. Two, the records are there, ladies and gentlemen, from that meeting. However, quite a number of people left that meeting protesting that suggestion. But it didn't seem appalling at all to the executive, that executive of Fontaine LGA. Not at all. It wasn't surprising though. They had since wanted Le BLM open up, Fontaine open up. They wanted schools to resume, hospitals open, churches to go on with their businesses. Now you saw Bernard Okalia in Le BLM over the weekend, and I'm sure you all confirm nothing is moving there. Everywhere it is deserted. Everywhere has been consumed with grass. But these guys were championing what? The resumption of activities, the opening up of activities in September. And in their mind, Field Marshal was the problem. As though Field Marshal was the one who sent people out of the BLM. When Larepo to Cameroon terrorist trips, you all have seen the video footage out there covered by the BBC of Larepo to Cameroon burning homes in the market square in Azi. You guys have seen that. You have seen them burning homes in Menji, ladies and gentlemen. That is the problem. It was the problem. It was the reason for which everybody left Le BLM, left Menji, left Azi, and abandoned it the way it looks today. Field Marshal wasn't the problem. If you are listening and watching me from the BLM as I speak, especially if you are in Chen, in Takwe, all those areas, 2 days before Field Marshal died, he gathered the people together and said to them, we want community schools to resume. If you have people in the diaspora who can sponsor community schools, in the remote areas, we will support those schools to resume. He called me and he spoke to me. I said, that's a good idea. Schools in Lekong, in JA, those remote areas were to be open. Community schools, not so-called government schools owned and operated by La République du Cameroun. Field Marshal made it very clear, no public school in Menji will open. No school in Alo, in Lewo, in those center towns, Azi, will operate. But in the neighboring villages, schools were planning to resume. Community schools were planning to resume. And he had asked the villagers, please contact your sons and daughters in the diaspora. Let them support these community schools. That is what was going on. Field Marshal wasn't the problem. He was the solution, ladies and gentlemen. And even Dion Gutes knows that. The colonial governor knows that. The criminal elite, the CPDM elite in Yaoundé and Douala and Boya, wherever they find themselves, even in the diaspora, they know that. They know that he wanted schools to resume. FMA was not the hindrance, ladies and gentlemen, but they wanted him taken off the way. If that former Fontaine LGA executive, led by Tony Asong, Chairman Dr. Nika, and Security Chief Fontaine Oliver, these three, again, Tony Asong, Dr. Nika, and Fontaine Oliver, if, ladies and gentlemen, if they want the people to believe their hands are clean, if they want you listening to the sound of my voice to believe their hands are clean, we will need them to explain why none of them objected or protested the idea of raising funds in that June the 19th meeting to kill Field Marshal the King. How come none of them raised an alarm and said, you cannot say that in here? John Talé and Edmund Folefe, who saw this idea in the past, ladies and gentlemen, have hardly attended Fontaine local government meetings. Since from the days of Sako, they have never considered themselves members of this interim government. This was the only occasion they showed up. They came in. They had a mission, and that mission was the execution of field marshal. An execution of field marshal. And can anyone believe that one of them is still seated in the ANC? Oliver Fontaine is still seated in the security team of Ambazonian, the so-called ANC. Ladies and gentlemen, I don't know what he is doing there, even when that entire executive has resigned, since resigned. It is ridiculous, to say the least. John Talley, the nurse, the leader of this in North Carolina, after a couple of speakers took to the floor berating him, he hastily but sarcastically apologized and then withdrew the statement. But who can tell what transpired after the meeting in the back rooms? Who can tell? Especially when Fontaine executive didn't see anything wrong at all with his suggestion. The BLM County and Fontaine LGA immediately went into a split after suggestions to kill field marshal and talks about opening up the county started. Fontaine LGA regrouped and formed a new executive. Not long after that, the entire former executive led by Tony Asom resigned. I have no doubt, ladies and gentlemen, that Paul Tasson isn't that generous to have all on his own put 23 million francs. That is close to $60,000. Close to $60,000. Paul Tasson isn't known to be that generous to put all of that money on his own on the table for the assassination of Field Marshal. Money left the diaspora to him. Money left the diaspora to Paul Tasson. I can assure you that where that money in the diaspora came from, we will dig into it and expose it. But at least for now, you have the clues. You know who opted to raise money in the BLM diaspora to kill Field Marshal. They will surely receive their pay. And I will be back. I will be back to inform you the moment those doors in the diaspora are open. And ladies and gentlemen, that is it. Now I'd like to bring to you the images of those who carried out the killing, the assassination of Field Marshal of Ambazonia. Now, the person you see here, ladies and gentlemen, I take this closely. The person that you see here, the guy on your left in military fatigue, is called Amadou. Amadou is the one who has now, as I learned, gone to be with Ekema Patrick. He couldn't eat the blood money. He was a hit man. That is the guy who shot Field Marshal and also used the butt of his gun, as I learned, to hit the face. That is him on your left. That is the hit man. The guy on your right is the one they call Per Secon. Ladies and gentlemen, none of them is a military personnel. They were all just dressed. They have been dressed up. You see the car, the truck that the guy on your right is standing in front. Because the military in the BLM became so afraid, ladies and gentlemen, of being blown up. They hired this guy. Ladies and gentlemen, to be driving them. They hired him to be driving them around the BLM. So that is the guy they call per second. Per second. That is his face. Again, the one whose death was fake. The guy whose death was fake. In the BLM, just to get fee marshal. That is his face. And again, the one on your left is the one who carried out the assassination of Field Marshal. I call them Paul Tassong's hitmen. Paul Tassong's hitmen. Now we also have this one here. He is called Atabong Kingsley. Atabong Kingsley. He was one of the team players who led the fall. He was number 2. Again, his name is Atabong Kingsley. He was among them in the bush. Now, Atabong Kingsley, ladies and gentlemen, if you can see the image behind him, that is the helicopter. That is the helicopter that took the remains, that flew to that village and carried the remains of Field Marshal to Kumba. Now let me remind you that the guy on your right, called per second, is the guy who transported the body of Field Marshal on that Okada machine. Again, the guy on your right is the guy who transported the body of Field Marshal on an Okada to the spot where the helicopter was waiting. Most of you saw that image. Now, the guy that is seated in that reconciliation meeting with Field Marshal, and they were seated there rejoicing, that guy is an innocent guy. He had nothing to do with this. In fact, I should say, all of the red dragons in the bushes, they had nothing, zero, to do with this ark. They had nothing to do with it. Again, this information I bring to you is coming from people who participated in the execution. I have them in record, in audio messages, talking one-on-one with yours truly. And not only that, we have military sources who were in that bush the day that Field Marshal was killed and taken. So we have dependable information. The guy on your right is the one who transported the body of Field Marshal on Okada to the helicopter. Now I'll take you to this other one. This other one is this is another one, another hitman, a member of the team. I think his name is what is his name? This is not Neville. I don't have the image of Neville. This should be ladies and gentlemen, I lost the name of this other guy, but the face is there. You can see the face. I have mentioned all of their names there. Now you can also see, I'd like you to look at this image, ladies and gentlemen. You look at this guy. That is, again, Atabong Kingsley sitting right there by the helicopter that transported the body of Field Marshal to Kumba. Now, the car you see there, that is a car he bought with the blood money from Paul Tassong on July 20th. On July 20th, ladies and gentlemen, that is the car he bought with the blood money. That is it. Now to a very humbling moment here, a very, very humbling moment here, ladies and gentlemen. Let me bring this to you. Let me bring this to you. If you can look at these images in front of you, look at those images. Look at those images. The young man that you see on your screen, the young man you see on the screen, with kids, with children. That is the red dragon. That was ambush. He was ambushed by La République du Cameroon, ladies and gentlemen. The young man was ambushed. That's a red dragon. The guy on the phone, and on the top left and bottom right is the same person. That handsome-looking gentleman fighting for the red dragons, hailed from Esot-Ata. Those two kids you find there, those are the two children he left behind. He was ambushed that day. He was the first to rush to the scene when he heard gunshots at the location of Field Marshal. Rushing to the scene with others following, he was ambushed first, and then, since the way they came was not the conventional way, others had to vamoose. He was ambushed. They could not kill him, I learned, with their guns. And then they caught him with hands, butchered him, and hung him on a tree with his intestines gushing out. That is him, that brave young man. I really pray that there are some good people out there who will volunteer to support these two kids, these two children left behind by this brave, handsome-looking Amazonian who decided to give his life to free the country. So, ladies and gentlemen, I am not bringing you the images in the diaspora for now. The only reason being that where the money came from precisely, we are still to put our fingers on it. But again, the executive of Fontem LGA, led by Tony Assom, Oliver Fontem, and Dr. Nikai, they are, I consider them accomplices. Again, the danger, the enemy here is Paul Tasson. Paul Tasson, ladies and gentlemen, is the enemy. Paul Tasson is the enemy, and I hope that every one of you out there takes note of that.